I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands.
Welcome to Build an Iconic Life podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whitehead, and this podcast is dedicated to help you build a life with zero regrets by focusing on how you have everything you need to stand up, stand out, and live life on your terms. Let's dive right in. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Build an Iconic Life podcast. This is season 2. I'm with a really good friend of mine, Terry Lajoie, and we've actually been sitting in here for about an hour just rapping. And we were actually supposed to record this podcast last week, and we actually did the exact same thing last week for like 2 hours. And I was like, oh, you got to come back. I really am glad that you come, and I'm glad for my podcast because it gives me a reason to shave. But other than that, I just wanted to introduce Terry. Number one, she is a seasoned realtor. And when I say seasoned, she actually makes really, really good money at what she does. She's run very big teams with it. And we're going to start off a little bit about business, and then we're just going to see where it goes. So, Terry, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Glad you're here.
Yeah.
So, first question. If you were to put yourself in a bracket inside of real estate as a percentage, are you in the top 50% or the bottom 50%?
Definitely in the top 50%.
Are you in the top 25%?
Locally, I'm going to say I'm definitely in the top 25%.
Okay. What would you say your number actually is? Nationally, based upon actual averages of realtors, what would you say your percentage is?
Probably in the top 20%.
Okay. So somewhere along the lines, I heard that most realtors never actually make real money at what they do, especially the first year.
Correct.
Tell me some of the fallacies that new realtors have that you would like to, like, if anybody's listening to this and is wanting to become a realtor, give them some reality. Tell them what it's like.
So the reality is national averages, an agent with less than 2 years of experience, they're going to make about $15,000 a year. That's before they pay the broker. That's before they pay taxes, before they pay any of their expenses, marketing, any of that. So they literally are not going to make any money for the first couple of years. That's the average.
Okay.
Now, having said that, I closed 19 deals my first year.
Yeah.
In about 8 months.
Okay.
So can you do it? Yes, you can. The average does not.
And why?
They don't know what to do or how to do it, and there's not enough training.
There's not enough training.
There's definitely not enough training.
Okay. Do people hang on for 2 years when they're making that kind of money? Are they working side jobs?
Most are working side jobs.
Okay.
The ones that really do well are honestly the younger ones. So if you got an 18 to 20-year-old who's still living at home with mom and dad, they don't have the overhead of a house and a car and all the expenses that people that get in, when they were much older, like I did, that I had a house to pay for. I had a car to pay for, there's all these other expenses. And so you're either going to make it or you're not. The younger folks, when they come in, they actually have a better chance as long as they've got that support system around them that they can get in and hold on for that time. Plus they're younger and they do things a little different.
True.
They're not afraid to innovate. They're not afraid to go out and try something. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, they toss it aside and try something else, and that helps them.
What do you think about, you talk about not having enough training. Mm-hmm. You also talk about, apparently you didn't either.
No.
But you closed 19 deals your first year. So, like, what's the differentiating factor between you and the average realtor? And this isn't about me blowing you up. It's about actually educating people on what they should do if they want to get similar results, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we talked about the average agent with less than 2 years of experience. Let's flip that coin first to the agent with under 10 years of experience. The average agent would say 5 to 10 years of experience. That agent nationwide is making about $50,000. Again, that's before they pay the broker. It's before they pay their taxes, before they pay their marketing or any other expenses.
So you're saying they're bringing $25K a year home?
Maybe. Historically, real estate was done by stay-at-home moms. It paid for the family vacation. It paid for the new kitchen.
Okay.
It paid for the extras that the family wouldn't have had. Now it's an actual career field. And the top 5% which I'm very fortunate to be in our local area and in that top 5%. We make a career out of it. But we show up for work every single day.
What does showing up for work every single day as a realtor look like?
Something that most people don't want to do. So most people, when you're starting out, in order to be successful in your first year, you are going to spend 8 hours a day, maybe 10 hours a day on the phones. You're going to cold call. When I got my real estate license and I said, okay, no, like, how do I get business? I was handed a phone book and said, call them. Remember the old printed phone books?
Mm-hmm.
I was handed the phone book and told to call them.
Wow.
And I said, and say what? Ask if they want to sell their house. Well, in case you didn't realize, not everybody in the phone book owned a house.
Yeah.
So
there wasn't a little line beside their name that said owner.
No.
Property, right?
No. And so you look at that and you're like, okay, so, and then the next question is, well, what do I say? Well, just ask them if they want to sell their house. Okay, you can imagine the phone calls that
click,
or the foul language that came with it, or, so there's not a lot of training that still exists, believe it or not. And so when you come into real estate, I'll never forget my very first deal. I was sitting at the conference table in the office at 9:30 at night with my client sitting across from me, and we're reading the purchase and sale together to try to figure out how to fill it out.
You and the client?
Me and the client.
Okay.
At 9:30 at night. It took us 2 hours.
And they were cool with that.
Thankfully, they were a friend of mine.
That makes sense.
So that's how I got started. And
so just tenacity is what you're saying. Pure tenacity. Like, I'm willing to get on the phone. I'm willing to do what these leaders are telling me to do. And I'm just going to pound it until I make a sale.
I did. And then I also did something that they told me not to do. Prior to being real estate, I was a software engineer.
Okay.
I built my own website. I won't do that anymore.
Yeah.
That's not my job anymore. But I built my own website. I was promoting and driving business to my website. I was buying leads.
Yeah.
I was doing whatever I had to because I got a mortgage to pay.
Yeah.
Right. And so I did that. Now, the office I was in probably had about 30 agents. It was a small office. Everybody told me that doesn't work. You can't do that. That's not going to work. Had I stayed with that company through the end of the year, I would have been Rookie of the Year.
Wow.
But it didn't work.
Right.
And so what I learned very early was what other people say doesn't work doesn't really mean it doesn't work. It means it doesn't work for them. It means they're not willing to do what it takes to get the job done using that method.
Sure.
Fast forward, get to another company, and I take a class called BOLD, Business Objective, A Life by Design. And they're teaching all about calling expired listings. I'm petrified. I'm not calling these people. Like, they don't know me. Their house just expired. They're pissed off. They don't want to hear from me. All the chatter in the brain, right? And so I remember I was sitting with a partner, and we were practicing scripts and dialogues, what to say, how to say it, where does the inflection go, all of that. We're practicing. For 3 months, every single day, he sat with me and practiced. I wouldn't make a phone call. I don't know it well enough yet. Now, I'm still doing business. I'm doing my thing, but I'm not doing that thing yet. Finally, we sit down, and he's like, you're not leaving that seat until you pick up the phone. Oh, boy. So I make the phone call. The deal was I would make a phone call. He would make a phone call. Well, we did that. And I made about 3 phone calls that first day. By the end of the next 3 months, I was making 50 calls an hour.
Wow.
To expired listings.
Wow. So it turned into a numbers game.
It turned into a numbers game.
Yeah.
And I took that year, I took 11 listings that were expired listings. Okay. So anything can work. The secret in real estate is finding the methods that work for you to generate the business that you need, that you want, to make the money that you want, and that works for you. I don't call expireds anymore. I don't need to. I don't want to. But can I? Sure. I can pick up the phone. I can call for sale by owners. I can call expireds. I can call, you can give me anybody. I've learned them all. But new people coming in, they don't have that person to sit with them.
Sure.
And practice with them again and again and again and role play. And when I had my team, we would have script practice every week.
Mm-hmm.
They would do the script practice, and I always had a whiteboard, and I would make my notes as they were doing their scripts back and forth. And then we would talk about them and make corrections. And at the end of every class, we had Stump the Teacher. So I had to run the scripts, and they could throw anything they wanted at me.
That's cool.
What was really cool was that we would start with an expired script, and I would jump into a for sale by owner, or I would jump into a referral script, or I would jump into any script, because I've got a whole book of them. I've actually probably got about 3 books of them. And they were like, that's not the right script. I'm like, why not?
Right.
I said, did it work? Did I get the appointment? Well, yeah. See, when you know enough, you don't have to be locked into one thing.
Yeah.
You can flow through conversations and have real conversations, and it's natural.
I absolutely love that. I remember, so I was in Amway,
mm-hmm.
and that was my prerequisite for owning my own business. I never made any money at Amway because I didn't realize it had been around in North Carolina for 20 years. So I'd bump into somebody at Walmart or some store. Oh, I've met you before. Get their business card, cold call them on the phone. And I remember the first month of me doing cold calls. I mean, not only was I nervous, but if they did come sit down with me, they would figure out halfway through that it's Amway.
Right.
And they get mad. So it's not a very good feeling. But when I first moved up here, I actually studied for my in my insurance license, and I passed. And I drove into Boston, and guess what I had to do? First thing, I got so much praise from the owners of that company for just doing cold calls. And it's like, there are people that are from other countries that barely speak the language that are making $10,000, $20,000 a month easily.
Absolutely.
But nobody wanted to get on a phone. And that is one of those things. I think that public speaking, writing a book, doing a podcast, there are certain things that scare the ever-living shit out of people, and cold calling is one of them.
Right.
And it does over time become a game, not because you're trying to figure out the right thing to say, but because you do not care whether they say yes or no. It's like, okay, no, click. Oh crap, I hung up on one that said yes. Let me call back real quick. It's just a numbers game. And for you to take the time, so you had a team of how many people?
At one point, I had 7 agents and 3 admins on the team.
Okay, so you had seven active people plus you,
right?
And you were providing the kind of training that you had received, right? Is that
no, I was not. I was providing a much higher level of training. I actually developed a new agent training program because I like working with new agents.
Okay.
Because they don't have any bad habits.
Okay.
I started out by bringing an agent on the team who had like 5 or 6 years of experience. And I say, okay, I need you to do this. I'm like, no, I don't do that. Okay, well, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
I did that 2 or 3 times and said, okay, this isn't for me. So then I went and I said, new agents. Everybody's like, oh, well, don't take a new agent because they're never going to get any business done. You're going to invest too much money and time into them. The reality is, yes, I invested time and money into them. I developed an 18-week training program. Now, these are brand new agents just passed their exam. Sometimes they would come to me before they even took the exam.
Okay.
I would teach them how to pass the exam because that's a trick in itself.
Sure.
And so teach them, okay, pass your test. Now they come in, they start their training program, and they would take the 18 weeks. And in that 18 weeks, we go through everything from setting up their CRM to setting up their website to how to navigate that. How do you manage a contact record? What do you touch every time you touch the contact record? What are the things that you need to do to disclosures and contracts? There's a disclosure in New Hampshire. It's our agency disclosure. It is required by state law to be presented at first business meeting every single time you meet with a new person. I have a new agent working for me right now. She's bought and sold 3 houses. Nobody's ever presented that form for her.
Really?
Really.
Which means it could be the deal breaker if she wanted to back out of the...
Well, it's the number one thing that gets agents in front of the real estate commission for complaints.
The number one thing?
The number one thing.
Wow.
Is agency.
Okay.
That's the number one thing.
Okay.
Because people think they've created a buyer agency or a listing agency or whatever, and they actually haven't. Well, the client thinks you have. And so in New Hampshire, agency is created by action or by contract. Well, you create it by action and then try to back up. That doesn't work. A contract's a contract as far as the state's concerned.
Sure.
You've created this contract, even though you didn't sign anything.
Wow.
And so we go through that agency disclosure. It's 2 pages. And I literally go through, in some cases, sentence by sentence, and I ask the new agent, okay, what's important in that sentence? What's important in that paragraph? What do we need to pull out of this so that we can explain it? Because I'm not going to read it to somebody.
Sure.
For sure. It gets to the point that, because my training program is building blocks. So we start with the disclosures, and then we go to the contracts, then we go to offers. And every single week as we progress, the first thing we do when I'm sitting down to train with that new agent, okay, pull out the disclosures, present them. Tweak, 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 tweak. They haven't even met with a client yet. But they know how to do it. And my agents got so good that I could literally walk up to you today and say, okay, Chris, present the agency disclosure. And you're looking for one. I'm like, no, you don't need it. You know it. Just present it. And they could.
Wow.
And they knew the contract so well, they could tell you what section in the contract related to what topic.
That's good.
And they were like, oh, well, that's section 9. And, and they would just relate to stuff like that because they knew them so well. And I would take them through their consults, through showing property. We spend hours in properties. One of their requirements was every week they had to look at my calendar and find a place to go look at 3 properties with me. We would walk up to a property and I would say, what kind of roof is it? Kind of siding. What's that meter for?
Yeah.
These are people that own houses, right? But they don't know anything about the house. So the first thing you have to do is teach them about the house, right? Because I worked for a company that there was a brand new agent. He went and did his first open house. Somebody came in and said, can you show me where the septic tank is? He took him in the basement and showed him the oil tank. Needless to say, that buyer was not impressed.
I get it.
At all. And so I don't want my agents to be that agent.
Sure.
Now, I will tell you, that agent is now a really good agent. He's very successful. He's
sure,
done an amazing job.
Stuck at it.
He did.
Yeah.
But he felt bad and then went back and learned. So my agents come through and they spend a lot of time. We go through houses and it gets to the point where I drive down the street and I'm like, yellow house, what's the roof? And I'm like, where's the yellow house? Right? Because they've only got until my car passes it to figure out what the roof is or to figure out what the steps are or whatever I call out.
Mm-hmm. And
I'll walk into a house. We're in the living room. How do you identify what the heating system is? Is it a furnace or a boiler? I'm like, I don't know. I got to look in the basement. No, you don't.
No, you don't.
Right? And so one of the things that I teach them is a boiler boils water. Mm-hmm. Furnace is air. Mm-hmm. So you have ductwork or you have vents. And so the idea is that they learn the house. Once they learn the house, then I teach them how to show a house.
And so none of this is actually taught.
Mm-mm. Now, the company I work for now, every week our brokers do a contracts class and they break down all of the disclosures, all of the contracts, and they just start with the first one. And if it takes them 3 weeks to get through it because there's questions or whatever, it takes 3 weeks and they go to the next and the next and they start over again. It's the only company I've ever worked for that has a contracts class.
When
they might teach it once a year, but.
So how long have you been doing this now?
20 years.
20 years. I have a little bit of inside knowledge about some things because you're one of my clients, but you're here now to help 4 distinct people. Is that correct? Or 3 distinct people? 3. Would you like to talk about who those 3 people are? Because who knows, maybe there's somebody listening here that is one of those people and maybe they'll reach out to you.
Sure. So technically there's 4 because there's also buyers.
Yeah.
So you have buyers that they want to buy something, whether it's investing or their own personal residence.
Which you're happy to help those people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what I've identified is that there's actually 3 different types of sellers. Most realtors think there's one. What they know is you want to sell your house. I'm going to sign a contract and I'm going to put the house in the multiple listings and I'm going to let other people bring buyers to it and hope somebody writes an offer.
Mm-hmm.
That's traditional real estate, right? So that's a traditional seller that's like, okay, that's what I want to do. Okay, we can do that. But then there's 2 other types of sellers. And most people don't really focus on them or pay any attention or treat them any different. One of those sellers is the person who, I need to sell this house right now. And I'll walk in, and one of the things that I learned a long time ago was to ask you, so Chris, what is your goal? What is it you're trying to accomplish here? Well, I need to sell a house. Okay, what's your time frame? Yesterday. When you say yesterday to me, there's a motivation there, but there's something specific.
Yeah.
Because just because you want to sell your house doesn't mean you need it sold today or yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
That person, there's a reason. And a couple of those reasons are going to be they're carrying 2 mortgages. Okay. They've already bought their new house and they wanted to buy their new house first, especially in the market we have today. It's a tight market. So I'm going to go buy my new house and then I'm going to sell this house. Well, okay, maybe it didn't sell with somebody else and they got to me that way. And now they're like, now I'm covering 2 mortgages. That doesn't feel good.
So what are the things they're going to have to focus on? Like you can't get everything in a negotiation, right?
Correct.
So somebody that wants to sell it yesterday, what are the criteria that you're going to have to explain to them?
So I'm going to go through the house, and the first thing I'm going to look for are things that are going to be appraisal issues or lending issues. So if I had one last year that had a closet that wasn't finished. They had ripped up a carpet leaving subfloor. Well, you can't get a loan. The house isn't considered complete.
Okay.
And so I walked through and I said, okay, we need to finish that closet and we need to put carpet down in that room. Doesn't need to be expensive. It just needs carpet.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be finished.
Mm-hmm.
And so we identify those things. If we're going to have financing issues, let's fix those things.
Sure.
Then I look through and I say, okay, what do you need? Because the people who want to sell right now, they're generally willing to trade some of the value for speed.
Sure.
Because you can't necessarily have both. Sometimes you get both.
Mm-hmm.
But in a lot of cases, you trade speed for money. Okay. And so if I need this house sold right now, I'm going to discount that house.
Okay.
Okay. In return, they're going to get a quick sale. Now, back in the recession, 2007, 8, 9, I would walk in and somebody would be like, all right, I need to sell this. And they were upside down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We need to do a short sale. And so we would handle those. But if someone is, I need to sell it right now. Okay. How quick of a sale do you need? Because your definition of right now and mine might be different.
Sure.
So that's the next question, right? What is right now to you? And they'd be like, I need this thing gone in 30 days. Okay. 30 days under contract or 30 days to close? 30 days to close. Okay. Given that we have a 30-day closing window, that means I got about 3 days to get it under contract.
Yeah.
Now I can do that. Now remember, this was at a time frame when I would sit in front of people and say, we have 7 years of inventory. Yeah. If nothing new comes on, it's going to take 7 years to sell everything. And you look at that and you say, okay, now Chris, in your town, 1 home sold in the last 30 days. So what do we need to do to make your home the one that sells in the next 30 days?
Sure.
I've had people leave big screen televisions and surround sound systems and plow trucks. You name it, they've done it because they understood. They're motivated and they understood what it was going to take. A lot of agents don't have that knowledge.
Okay.
And it's not that if you tell them that they weren't like, oh yeah, I get that. Right? When you explain it to them, they get it.
Sure.
They're smart people.
Sure.
They really are. Just haven't been trained. And so that's the second person. Or maybe they inherited a property and they didn't realize that there are timeframes that you have to sell that to meet the probate rules and things like that. So they called me and they're like, the judge is saying I have to have this sold by this date. Yep. And they were in panic mode. It's like, okay, well, let's slow down. And there's like three or four questions that I ask up front for an estate and say, okay, Do you have permission to sell? Yes. Are you the named executor? Yes. Are there any other heirs? Do we need consent of heirs? And when we ask those questions, and if they don't know them, which usually they don't, okay, go back to your attorney, ask those questions. In the meantime, I'm going to get everything ready to go. But they're another person that's going to need to sell quick, or somebody who's in pre-foreclosure that they may have an auction date already scheduled, or they're getting notices from the bank that they're going to be foreclosed on.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of cases, there are ways that we can avoid the foreclosure. And that's my goal, is avoid the foreclosure.
Sure.
Because foreclosures stay with you for way too long. And they're typically followed with a bankruptcy, because it's the only way to get rid of that debt from the bank. If you go through a foreclosure, you're still responsible for that mortgage for life.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
The only way to get rid of it is a bankruptcy. So if we can avoid that and get the home sold for you, that's a win. So that's the second person. And then the third one is kind of a unique situation. The third one is the person who says, I want the absolute maximum value for my house. Okay. And met with one, I don't know, probably 6 months ago. They were listed in the multiple listings with another agent, and I went in with an investor of mine. They were $100,000 over the value of what the house was actually worth today.
That's saying something.
That is saying something. Well, and the house had been on the market for 465 days.
I wonder why.
In this market.
Sure.
Okay. My investor was able to literally offer them $100,000 more than that.
Wow.
Now that's impressive, right?
Sounds it.
And this is why it's not for everybody. There was no mortgage on the property because they had owned it forever. It was an investment property. They were willing to amortize out and seller finance 90% of the note. Literally, they wanted 10% down. 90% of the note was going to get seller financed. They came to an agreement with the investor for a 100-year amortization. Mm-hmm. And it was basically, your kids are going to pay my kids, and we're both going to be gone 100 years from now, so I don't really care.
Yep.
They didn't need the money. They wanted mailbox money for their children down the road, and they wanted to minimize the amount they were going to pay in capital gains. Because on the capital gains, you pay for what you receive that year. Mm-hmm. And obviously, I'm not an accountant, so please
talk to
your accountant. That's my disclaimer. But that's a way to minimize those taxes. And so that's not for everybody. That doesn't fit for everybody. But when that is the situation, we can make all kinds of things happen. Because think about it, that seller was going to get $200,000 more than what the house was worth.
It's amazing. You know, we've no secret, but we've been building a syndicate of people that are all interested in investing in real estate. We're looking into super high level real estate, a lot of rentals, and I've been studying like crazy. Real estate is one of the coolest toys to play with that no one has ever really talked about.
Right.
There's so many tax benefits to it. The fact that it's a real thing, that it typically, actually not typically, it always goes up in value.
Not always.
Over time.
Over time.
I've never seen real estate start at 100 anything and end up at 50 unless somebody threw a bomb on it or something. Over 50 years. And then when you get into the rental real estate, there's a whole nother ball game. Right. And then the paper trading and the teams that we're actually building even inside of Iconic excite the crap out of me, because right. I have experts like you that know like all the questions and all the answers to ask, and then all the people to connect to. And there's so many people that could get involved in real estate if they just educated themselves. Everybody puts a barrier, and it's always money.
Right.
And what I found about money is that it's a tool. It's not a real thing. And when we make it a real thing, we actually use it as a limiting belief system. And I've watched you do it for people. We've talked about deals. It's one of the coolest things that I've ever seen. And the fact that you're taking the time to actually educate people that are coming into real estate is really to be applauded, because one of the jokes is like, what is a real estate agent good for? There's a living room. I know that's a fucking living room. That's a kitchen. I know that's a kitchen. Like, I don't need you to tell me that. But if you can ask questions like, well, how old is the boiler? How old is that roof? What about that siding? What about this? Is it an A+ condition? Is it an excellent? You told me about like 4 or 5 categories that a property sits in that you can come educated right off the bat. And maybe some people want smoke blown up their butt. But when I go talk to an expert, I want to know the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Let me make up my mind for myself, but give me the information that I can do it with. And there aren't a lot of realtors that I've talked to that actually disclose that information to the seller or the buyer.
And sadly, there's a lot of realtors that don't have the information. It's
Well,
not
that's
that they
why.
don't want to disclose it, because they will tell you everything they know. And they are legitimately giving you all the knowledge that they have. I fight all the time for more education, and that's why I teach. So I'm a national trainer in real estate, and I have a 9-hour class to teach agents how to maintain their database. 9 hours. How to maintain the database.
Sounds intense.
But we have fun with it, but they don't know what they don't know, right?
Sure.
And just to maintain your contact management system in a way that makes it work for you is huge. To educate a real estate agent that there are 3 phases that a seller or buyer goes through prior to being ready. Because if I call you today and I say, hey, I want to sell my house, and you're like, great, you think I'm ready now. No, sorry. I'm 24 to 27 months away from being ready.
Really?
Really. And so people don't know that. The average buyer and seller, when they log onto a website or they ask for contact, they put in their contact information to see a property online, they are 24 to 27 months away from actually being ready to do business with you. So what are you going to do
to maintain the relationship?
To create a relationship first, maintain the relationship, provide value for the next 24 to 27 months. And there are 3 phases that they go through. The first phase is pretty long. They want to hide behind the veil of the internet. I don't want to talk to you.
Right, I just want to research.
Exactly.
Okay.
Let me give information. Well, during that phase, if I see what you're looking at and I just feed you more information, you keep coming back to me.
Mm-hmm.
Phase 2 is really, really short. And I probably shouldn't be putting this out here, but I'm going to do it. Phase 2 is really, really short. Now you're at that decision time. Am I going to buy? Am I going to sell? Maybe yes, maybe no. And you could go either way. It's literally anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Out of that 24 to 27 months. So that really short window is when you might reach out to me and ask a question. If I ignore you, you bounce.
Yep.
If I
this actually flags with just about everything that I teach in sales in general.
Right.
It's just the time period is a different time period. But
Right.
these are the same models.
Yeah. And if I push at you, you're gonna bounce.
So it's value give at that stage as well.
100%.
How can I help you?
How can I help you?
Okay.
You want information? I'm going to give you information. Then they get ready and they're ready to actually sit down with me and have a conversation around what they're doing and what's important to them and what that looks like.
Do you know, it's so funny that you say this, because until you did, I didn't even think about it. So about 2 years before we bought the house that we live in, I went not to a realtor, but to a mortgage person.
Right.
And I said, I'm a business owner. So because of tax abilities, I can show or not show certain kinds of income.
Right.
And I said, if I carry no debt, how much do I have to make for 2 years? Because you have to make money for 2 years to purchase this kind of home. And he said this kind of number. And what I did over that next 2 years is put myself in a position so that we were ready for it. And when I was ready, I reached out to somebody. That person said what they value added. Told me what they would do. We just happened to be in a market that the house sold in one day for 113 over asking. And then we were in a hotel for 3 months. That sucked. But that's just the way the market was. But you're absolutely right. And if realtors don't know that, you can spend all of this time on the front end doing all of this stuff and miss the buying signal.
Right.
I think about going out on a date. There's a million ways. And instead of you having a breakthrough year, you end up having the $25,000 or $50,000 year, and you're giving the same effort minus one thing.
Right.
And most of the things in my life, because I'm like you, I'm a like full effort kind of human, right? There's nothing worse than giving something all you got and you're like, I'm never going to quit, but you're kind of like, and I'm really tired. But when someone who is more experienced comes in and says, wait, you're doing 99% right, just do this at that time, you're like, eureka. It's life-changing.
It is.
Absolutely life-changing.
It is.
So
there's a reason
that we're on step 2, and then what do you do step 3?
Step 3 is you meet with them and
show them what they want.
Correct.
Okay. So you said there is a reason.
Yeah. So the new agents that have gone through my new training program and completed the whole 18 weeks, and they've learned all the steps. And once they start doing offers, they do offers every single week as practice. And I critique them and send them back and fix this, fix that. So when they actually get out in the field, guess what?
They have success.
They know how to do it. By the time they graduate the program, they're in production. They have actual clients that they have met with, they have converted, and they're working with. By the end of their second full year in business, they're making 6 figures.
Which is what probably people wanted to do in real estate to begin with, because that's what they keep hearing.
Correct.
It's an easy way to make 6 figures. There's nothing easy about being a realtor, though, is there?
No. But it is fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Why is it fun for you?
I love the people. I went through 3 careers. First one was accounting.
So you are accounting.
First one was accounting. Second one was software engineer.
Yep.
So first one, I dealt with a lot of people, and I decided I didn't like people. What I really didn't like was
every accountant I've ever met.
What I really didn't like was people yelling at me.
Sure.
And in the particular job that I had, I dealt with a lot of receivables, and people just didn't, if they were coming in, they didn't want to be coming in to see me. And so then I said, okay, I'm going to go be a software engineer. I'm going to put the headphones on. Everybody's just going to ignore me. Well, I did that for 10 years. And then I decided I wanted to invest in real estate. And that was right before the last run up, before the recession. And I ended up, not every house that I identified was a good deal. I couldn't get into it fast enough. And so I said, all right, well, if I can't beat them, I'll join them. And so I got my real estate license, and someone said, oh, you got to sell it. I'm like, I have never sold anything in my life. How do I do this?
Now, how old were you? You're 30 years old.
I was 30.
When you decide to become a realtor, and you've never sold anything in your life.
Never sold anything in my life.
Are you talking?
Never done eBay, never did a yard sale, never sold anything.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
Hey, friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please leave a review and subscribe to catch future casts. If you really enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it so others can benefit from it as well. I'll see you in the trenches.
Try to catch me howling at the moon.